Welcome to Cars on Call. I'm automotive journalist Steve Schutz, and I'm here with trauma surgeon Stephan Moran. We're the only we're the only car podcast that has a trauma surgeon. Stephan, I'm mumbling my words, but
Retired trauma surgeon.
yeah. So what? You still have your stories and your
It's like a
history, and
bicycle, man. I could yank out a spleen. I could yank out a spleen in no time.
yeah, it's like riding a bike.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just certain things critical care would be a little bit different, but the technical skills of surgery, it honestly is like riding a bike. I could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I haven't lost any fingers with woodworking, so it's all good.
That's so far,
Yeah,
or
so
yet,
far I do have a band-aid on a finger, but not from woodworking.
as Meghan Markle would say, yet. So one of my least favorite celebrities. It
Yeah.
was always Gwyneth Paltrow was always my least favorite celebrity. Now it's Meghan Markle.
I'd have to agree on both counts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
capital A annoying.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so when we started a few years ago, we focused on an amazing story. We called it the transport ship that caught fire, and the transport ship had a stripper name. Do you recall what that was, Stefan?
The Felicity Ace. Yes. And led by Captain Tiffany.
Yeah, I think it caught fire because it was an electric car, but all those single dollar bills were good fuel.
Exactly. Well, yeah, here we go once again.
So tell us about it. This was unexpected and yet a complete predictable outcome.
Well, around the world, there have been multiple cases of cars catching fire in bad places, electric EVs, especially parking decks. I mean, it literally burns a hole through the concrete. They can't control the fire. Well, out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean is a Chinese ship, goes on its way to Mexico, and it is called the Morning Midas. And the crew noticed some smoke coming out of it. It's carrying 750 fully or partially electric hybrids. I'm not quite sure, but there's a bunch of lithium-ion batteries. And they noticed smoke coming from that deck where those ships were on. They tried to get it out. They put the fire out. They couldn't. So 22 of them called Mayday. And fortunately, there was a merchant marine ship not far away. So they got into their lifeboats and they were all rescued. But that ship remains out there burning. And I have not seen I looked it up to see if things actually sunk or what's happened to it. But it's abandoned and burning. And think about, as Adams, I wish he'd be with us here, but he's unable to. But think about we talk about, oh, the EVs save the world, the carbon footprint. Okay, well, think about the ecological disaster of this. I mean, that toxic smoke, burning all this stuff up, going to the ocean. Imagine if this did happen in a port.
Oh, oh my gosh. Because all those batteries just sink to the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, down in the Marianas
The
Trench, well, I guess that's the
batteries sink.
Atlantic.
You got the rare earth metals. You got lithium. You got all this terrible stuff, and it's at the bottom, swimming with the fishes. The fishes are swimming through this.
Oh, yeah. So I think it's terrible. I'm glad everybody got off alive, but once again, they're trying to develop technology to help control these fires.
Yeah,
But
so it's just a terrible. It's a disaster.
yeah, it's a real disaster. But let me see, I do have a picture here. Let me pull this up. It's, I mean, I can't imagine how frightening that would be to be on a ship and this is going on. There we go. There it is. All right, what we got next, Steve?
Well, there's a picture. I just can't believe this is going to be a recurring problem, Stefan, and that
Yes.
they have to figure out a way to ship these cars maybe without the batteries and reconnect them somewhere else or do something because this is such a bad look for EVs. Number one, and number two, ecologically, it's a disaster. By the way, another little EV story, and we've been bashing EVs not because we don't love the environment; it's because we do love the environment, and this is a problem. The G Wagon. So, a criticism of Mercedes EVs has been that they just look like lozenges They don't look like real Mercedes. And I told a story a couple of years ago about the EQS sedan coming up behind me, and I thought it was a Hyundai until I realized that I saw the huge Mercedes badge, and I'm like, all right, it's a Mercedes. It's a Mercedes. It did not look like a Mercedes. Well, now, Stephan, the
Well,
G-Wagon, they
that's
said, all right, we're going
insulting the Hyundai because the Hyundai actually looks good.
to. Good point.
Yes.
So they decided, all right, we're not going to do that. The problem, we're not selling EVs because they look like lozenges. They don't really look like Mercedes. So what they did was they said, we're going to make a G-Wagon BEV, all electric, and it looks exactly the same as a regular G-Wagon. They cannot move them. They sit there, and there was a report that a Mercedes engineer high up in the company said, this is a complete flop, was the word he used.
Oh, well, I think, yeah, in America, I mean, there's clearly a niche for the pure EV. I mean, there clearly is. America doesn't have very niches that are very friendly to EVs in terms of recharging and everything. And so, yeah, everybody jumped off the bandwagon. Now everybody's bailing out. All these companies spent a ton of money on it. They've lost a lot of money. Jim Farley recently talked about on his podcast where he actually had to form a skunk group to try to catch up with the Chinese technology on their EVs. So when we do make the move to EVs, the rest of the world is going to be way behind China, which I've mentioned before. To me, that's really scary. But I think it's so far out in America, we've got time. There may be something else by time. But as we've said on the show, once again, focus on the hybrids. I think the plug-in hybrid is really the way to go if you want a hybrid. You go 30, 40 miles on your charge, or just a simple hybrid that's not a plug-in. Either way, converting braking energy back to electricity, which you need to use to propel the vehicle, that makes sense. Okay. And the gasoline engine is so good, but Ford continues to invest in the internal combustion engine, making it better and better. And I think that's the way to go. But this idea of pure BEVs, it just is just not a good look. But it could have been a hybrid that caught fire too. They've got batteries on these ships, but so it's a problem. But the battery technology is improving. But once again, this is a huge ecological impact that you could burn a lot of gasoline for a lot less devastation.
Yeah, amen. Speaking of Ford, Stephan, there's a story that I was thinking about that has been not only underreported, it's been not reported. And it is a really important story. And I'm going to, first of all, give credit to Alan Mulally. Alan Mulally is a CEO for Ford. He was the CEO from '06 to 2014. And number one, he saved the company. Ford was the only company that didn't have to get a federal bailout. And number two, he transformed the company. And he made the company what it is today. And I don't think he gets nearly enough credit. He should go on in history as one of the best U.S. automotive CEOs ever. One thing he did that was so important was he said, I want to have one Ford. And what he was getting at is, why do we have certain Fords that are sold in other countries and different Fords here? A great example is the Focus. The Ford Focus came over here. The Ford Focus, they finally made it similar, but in America, why? And then the Focus was mostly the same, but still there were huge differences. And then he started by saying, hey, let's look at vans. If you go to Europe, there's something called the Ford Transit. It's lower, it's more fuel efficient. It's based on a bespoke van platform. It's very configurable, but mostly it's fuel efficient and relatively light compared to the Econoline we had here. So if you want to show a picture of the Econoline and then the Transit, so Alan Mulally said this makes no sense. So in 2009, again, he came in '06 and he made this first change in '09, which is as fast as you can do anything in the automotive world. And he brought over the Transit Connect van. So the Econoline, that's the Transit. There's the Econoline. So not fuel efficient, heavy, not configurable, just old school. Stefan, the Econoline van dates back. This actual platform came out in the 70s, and we're still selling it almost 50, well, 40 years later at the time. This is the Transit Connect. That's a smaller version. And this came out, and this is perfect for a plumber, an HVAC guy, or something like that. I've got a friend who owns a appliance repair business, and he has nothing but these Transit Connects. And then he got rid of the Econoline, Mulally, and came out with the Transit. If you look around the United States now, instead of the big Ram or Dodge van, which they used to have the shed for Econoline, those are gone now. And you've got small vans and you have larger vans like the Transit. These are now the standard. Unlike pickups, which are still the big pickups and different from Europe, the vans have become Europeanized completely. The Dodge ProMat, the Ram ProMaster, and then Chevy's got these international vans too. I forgot what they're called. And of course, the Sprinter, the Mercedes Sprinter. If you look at any commercial van now, it's different than it used to be 15 years ago. And this is a gigantic change. I don't know why no one talks about it.
Well, so we had, I remember in high school, my dad bought a Ford Econoline van, the Chateau trim level, which was kind of their nice
Oh, I
trim.
remember that. It had like 4 rows of seats.
Yeah, but we had the two front seats, then we had a three-person bench. This is back in 1978 now, in 77. And then we had two sofa chairs from the den that we put in the back of the van. And, we would sit around in the back of the van, and for long trips, we'd put a futon, which is a mattress in the back, and just lay in the back and sleep. And when we put our seatbelt on when we sit in the back seat, it had a lap only. The front seat had shoulder belts. And I actually remember we'd drive to West Virginia. This is back in the speed limit was then it got changed to 55. It was so painful. You just didn't want to stop. So dad would put on cruise control and he and I would swap drivers going down the interstate because you didn't want to lose time because when you went from 70 to 55, all of a sudden the trip times just became just awful. So I
Terrible.
remember the Econoline and it was big, heavy, ran on retread tires and then but you're right, the European movement, the Transit Connect, Andrew Clark, who we've had on the show, he's got his wiring company. He has nothing but the smaller Ford Transit vans. They're perfect for that. And they really filled a niche. And then for the larger vans, but you're right, there was a monumental move on these unitized body
Right.
vans for construction. And then, now they're luxury transporters, but a fabulous move that has been, I'm sure, is a huge profit maker, just like the F-150 trucks. It's got to be a huge profit segment.
You make more profit if you don't have to develop two different vans for different markets. You just have one, and that's what they've done. And there's so many advantages. And to me, this is a part of the automotive landscape that is completely transformed. And it's astounding to me that no one's talked about it.
Yes, I mean, I bet you there's more transit vans running out there than Forerunners. I don't think so, but start paying attention to the transit van, and you'll be surprised how many of them are out there. They just
Yeah.
kind of snuck them in, and you're right, for a plumber, electrician, anybody construction, they're perfect. Way better
They're
than a pickup truck.
more fuel efficient and they're better. So, all right. Let's talk about trauma surgeon safety. We are the only automotive podcast that has a trauma surgeon who can talk about. I've always said this. I mean, if you look at automotive media, which of course we're all consumers of, you hear engineers, CEOs, and designers talking about car safety. You never hear an ER nurse or, God forbid, a trauma surgeon. They should, and that's why I think that's what differentiates us. And I love that you talk about this. Everybody should hear this, Stefan.
Well, it gives a different perspective, and we drive around in our cars, and we don't, and we forget, we think there's, we forget about how actual dangerous it is to be driving your vehicle. I mean, think about it, almost 40,000 people a year die in cars. I mean, that is just unacceptable. So, the perspective that I bring is also a bit jaded because I always see the worst side of it. But I look at things very differently. And sometimes I get some viewpoints that I didn't even think about. And you and I talked about this, but there's several articles that came out of San Francisco. They're talking about how women like Waymo. So Waymo is the autonomous taxi, and the women absolutely like it. And from a I think from a trauma as well as from this is really from the safety standpoint. Of course, I'm looking at it from the side of a male, and I would have never had this perspective. But this makes total sense. I mean, over 75% of rideshare drivers are male. You know, and we all know males can we can be testosterone is a controlled substance, and there's no doubt that as a woman, think about it, you're getting in a taxi, a ride share to go home after you've been out with friends. Do you want this guy taking you to your house, knowing where you live? Hell no. But you get in a Waymo, you've got a safe autonomous transport to your home. You don't have some guy asking for your phone number in the front. I never, I mean, I read this, I'm like, Jesus, this makes sense. I've had taxi drivers, I mean, be completely obnoxious. And I can see the idea of this women absolutely loving it. I think it's fantastic. So, now you got to look at, are there really a lot of physical assaults or sexual assaults occurring in these Lyft, and it's about 1 in 500,000. So it's really not that high. But there is a downside that I read about that one girl lady, she got in the Waymo and she was trying to escape these two guys who wanted her phone number. She didn't want it. So what did they do? They stood in front of the Waymo. It
Oh no.
paralyzed the vehicle. Yeah. But they do have buttons now that you can hit in there. But so I mean, just men being men, unfortunately. Not all men are like that. But I just thought this was great. I haven't talked to my wife about this. But what do you? I mean, I think it's a great advertisement. It's a great utilization of it, and yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of women wanting to take Waymo. If you got a choice between Waymo, Uber, Lyft, and taxi, and it's 11 o'clock, midnight, you're going home, you're female, you're single, what are you going to take?
Yeah, it's a no-brainer because even if nothing happens on the ride, the driver now knows where you live, and they can stalk you or
Yes.
something like that. And if you're a woman living alone, you're really vulnerable. And the idea that somebody, and it's repetitive. If you travel for work and you're taking an Uber, maybe every month you're doing it, so that's 12 times a year. And actually, if it's 24 because they got to pick you up and drop you off. So that's 24 guys every year that know where you live. And it's more than that if you go out for restaurants and things like that. You can imagine 100 different men would know where a single woman would lives in a year easily. So this is, I would be very uncomfortable if I were a woman. So I'm not surprised that women would preferentially take a Waymo. And let's face it, that's the way this is going. This is absolutely going to take over. The Wall Street Journal has an article, as you know, talking about the exponential growth of Waymo. Once it gets into a city and gets normalized and people get used to it, people embrace it.
Yeah, but I think another great point that read in this article was there are times you want to have a private conversation, and it may not be at an opportune moment. It may be business, it may be personal, but you're stuck in a vehicle, you're in traffic, you're having to do a ride share. In a way, you don't have to worry about it. Now, I don't know if they've got microphones and those things. I'm sure they do for emergencies, but they're not going to be monitoring. So I think that's another great idea. So I think you're right. We're just beginning to see the beginning of this, but I think it is going to really take off, just in the way that Uber and Lyft took off, because people would rather do an Uber or Lyft than a taxi any day. I still don't like taxis, but I'll do an Uber or Lyft. Then the Waymo's to me is the evolution of rideshare once again. That's going to be where people are at.
Here's my take, Stefan. The reason that our roads are clogged with cars at rush hour with one person in it is people prefer to be by themselves. They don't want to
Yes,
be with strangers.
yes.
And that's just the way it is. I have a very busy job. I'm talking to people all day long, nonstop. And then at the end of the day, the idea that I can just get in my car and be by myself is extremely appealing. And I think the appealing is huge. I had an example of something. it was a ride. It was not a ride share. It was a car service, and I had to take it from one town to another. And the guy, who was very pleasant, would not shut up with his
Mm.
stupid stories about his stupid family. And they were so
Ugh.
boring. And he meant well. He's a nice guy, but I was just, I almost lost the will to live. It was unbelievable how boring this was.
Yeah.
Well, I would have taken Waymo over that guy anytime. There's all kinds of reason that people just prefer to be by themselves or with
Yeah.
someone that you know. There's safety reasons and non-safety reasons.
That's why, that what you gotta ask him, what would you mind playing my favorite song for me? Oh yeah, what's that? The Sound of Silence by
Ah,
by Art and by Simon and Garfunkel. There you go. That's all you got to do. And maybe you'll get the message. All right.
yeah, it,
Yeah.
yeah. I just think that this is there's
Yes.
so many reasons why this is going to take off and be popular. It's going to take a long time before, Waymo is going to be really a player out in the country. If you're out in the country, you're going to drive your diesel truck from your ranch to town. That's not going to change for a long time. But in cities and suburbs, boy, I think Waymo is going to be
Yep.
infiltrating quickly.
And it's gonna, yeah, this is the evolution from taxi to Uber, Lyft to Waymo. It's gonna take over. So, and another thing in news I want to talk about was Volvo released a new three-point seatbelt. So a continued evolution of the seatbelt that Niels Bohlin invented in 1959. And I mentioned before, he said, I'm not going to patent the seatbelt. I want everybody to have it because it saves lives. So I was fortunate enough to be with Volvo at the 50-year anniversary at the New York Auto Show. About almost 92% of Americans wear seatbelts. We're pretty good with that. But you need to wear your seatbelts. And because the statistics aren't good, 50% of unrestrained occupants are killed. I mean, it saves a lot of lives. But what I discovered in my research back in 2000, early 2000 at University of Alabama when I was with Mercedes-Benz Siren program, the Crash Injury Research Engineering Network, I got looking at and thought about how the cars were crash tested with the Hybrid 3 crash dummy at the time only. So if you weren't a male that fit the size of the dummy versus say a 5 foot female weighing 90 pounds, you're going to react differently with the interior of the vehicle and the seatbelt. I did several studies that showed absolutely that's the case, that your body size, shape changes how you interact with the vehicle in a crash, and certain groups had higher fatalities. I actually got interviewed by NPR on this morning report. Well, what Volvo did, and is an evolution, is they said, you know what? We have so many sensors in vehicles now. We know how much the occupant weighs. We know how big they are. So what Volvo is doing is now utilizing not only the sensors in the vehicle at the time of the crash, how fast the car is going, what the impact is. Also, the person in the vehicle, and they're modifying the pre-tensioners in the vehicle as well as the how you down when you're in a crash, the seatbelt tightens up, then the seatbelt slowly releases to help you survive the crash. You think about it, the seatbelt was just tight like a rope. It would literally just, I mean, it would break everything in your rib. I mean, all your ribs and cause a lot of internal injury. So now, they don't call it the smart seat belt, but technically it really is now Volvo has a smart seat belt, and it's going to be out in the new Volvo EX60 in 2026. Really cool that they're using real-time data from the car sensors to vary the seat belt in the vehicle. And I just think that is so cool. And that's going to be the next, clearly, this, I think eventually this technology should make it across to all vehicles. It'll initially be expensive as with anti-lock brakes, with three-point seat belts, with all the new systems. They now end up becoming standard. And I think down the road, this will be the standard, is the smart seat belt.
It makes sense, Stefan.
Yeah.
We have such advanced software, and the software can run. The software is so smart that you can have four electric motors controlling four different tires or different wheels, and they all work together, and everything is really seamless. That's why you can have something like the Mercedes G Wagon that's electric that nobody's buying, but it can go around in a circle like this because the software controls all four wheels. Well, if you have that sophisticated software, and of course we do, why not apply that to the seatbelt? It makes sense, and it should integrate not just the seatbelt, but the sensors and all that stuff. But it should be a smart seatbelt slash airbag.
Yes. Yeah, that'd be the airbags, those are going to be a little controlling the rate of basically an airbag is a controlled explosion, you know.
Right.
So that I think down the road of how they control, I mean, that would be a lot of technology having varying levels of explosion. And there's times actually you would like to have the airbag actually maintain its deployment, but because if you have a collision, the airbag deploys once. But then if you bounce off that and then run into a brick wall or telephone pole, your airbag is gone. It,
Or a
it
rollover.
deployed or rollover. Yeah, exactly. So, but just interesting technology. And once again, Volvo, and I would say Geely, but Volvo has maintained their engineering base, safety engineering base. I think it's an exciting development and a long time coming. To think about it, we had the original seatbelt came back, since Niels Bohr invented it in 1959, and it's taken this long to end up with a smart seatbelt. But a lot of testing involved. But once again, hats off to Volvo for leading the way in seatbelt technology.
Yeah, as you know, they always advertise and they say sex sells. Well, this is like the opposite. I mean, what's less sexy than safety? But it's important. It's worked for Volvo. They've sold a lot of cars through safety. But yeah, fortunately they do it, and fortunately it trickles down to other companies. They don't hold on to the technology.
Right.
All right, another thing that's really interesting. We talked about this last week, Stefan, kind of. And what we talked about is, how can Porsche pull out of the doldrums? They're down in China, they're down all over, and their EVs aren't taking up the slack like they should. And EVs are not selling. So they're kind of stuck, and they're not making nearly the profits they used to make. And if this trend continues, they're going to be in real trouble. They've been in trouble over the years, over the decades. Periodically they go into a time where they really struggle. Well, this looks like they're getting to one of those times, and we talked about them making new versions of 911 to save them. And then the big thing, you said, let's make a new 914. Great idea. Something that's affordable sports car. And I thought, just brainstorming, hey, just take the Volkswagen Golf platform. Porsche, of course, is part of Volkswagen. Take the Golf platform and make something out of that. It's very affordable. You take the platform off the shelf and you can make a Porsche 914 equivalent. And I think they'd make a lot of money and people would be happy. It'd be a great car, a future classic. Well, that reminded me that this year the Audi TT is 25 years old. It came onto the scene in 2000. The Gen 1 was 99 to 2000 model year until '06. So they had a '07 to 2014 was a second gen, third gen, 15 to 23. It was just discontinued. There's no more Audi TT you can buy. Stefan, this car was I still remember it came out. I'm like, this is so beautiful. And the genesis is the new CEO of Volkswagen, who took over Volkswagen Group in 1993, was the former head of Audi. And he wanted something for Audi that would be cool and affordable and really exciting. That, of course, was Ferdinand Piëch,
Your favorite dude.
my favorite auto executive of all time.
Yes.
And he found an American designer who was working for Audi, and he brought the guy to his office. I can't imagine how intimidating that was. And he said, I want you to do this. I want you to use Bauhaus design, which was an old German type of design back in the 20s and into the 30s. And he said, I want you to use the Golf platform and Bauhaus design and make a car. And he said, this is such a secret that you may not work on it on any company computer during business hours. You could only work on it at home, weekends and at night. And he wanted to design in like a month. So the guy got like no sleep, and he came up with this, and he presented it, and Ferdinand PX said, "That's it. That's the car." And this is essentially unchanged from what Freeman Thomas did. And this car came out and it was a sensation. First of all, it went to the Frankfurt Motor Auto Show, I think in like 95, it was like 3 years before. And this went to the auto show and it was a sensation. And if you look at this car versus the show car, very, very few changes. Stefan, I remember I was, early in my auto writing career and I got one of these press cars. I'm like, this is so great. I'll tell you a funny aside. I was going around this turn pretty quick. I lifted and the back came out. I don't know, I was going maybe 60 miles an hour and the back came out. I'm like, what the hell just happened? I settled it quickly. Everything was fine. And I thought, well, just me. I lifted too quick to turn. Well, it turns out there was something aerodynamically wrong with the car. And they had a couple high speed crashes on the Autobahn. And it was because there was lift at the rear at high speeds. I was going maybe 55 or 60. Imagine getting it's magnified when you're going 100 miles an hour. So they had to quickly make some software changes. And they all, I don't know if you remember this, all the first gen TTs had a lip spoiler that was
Yes,
added later.
right. They had to add that little wing at the back. Yeah. I remember, I think Jay Mays also, previous Ford designer, had some input on this as well. But I do remember when the Audi TT came out, and I'm going to show you that even the interior details, this car was such a monumental design change from everything else at the time. And it just exuded coolness. And it stayed pretty cool, and they modified it over the years. It has always looked good. I like two-door coupes. But sales went down on it. But yeah, I remember when this car came out and it was just coolness.
Total cool. Yeah, if you look at this picture, the vents, the vents in the center, the air vents, it looks like the air vents kind of go through and they go to the windshield because you see the vents that feed the windshield, the defroster vents, they look like they're like it's a tube. It's all part of one structure. It isn't, but it looks like it. They had these kind of divots in the aluminum, and you use that as you were twisting things. I also remember there was a seat warmer thing, and you twisted it, and it had the same billet like aluminum, and you twisted it, and these lights came on 1, 2, 3 for the level of seat heater. It used to be it was just on or off. This is the first vehicle I remember where you could do that. The aluminum pedals, and then the pedal, the dead pedal where you put your foot, all aluminum. It all kind of it worked together. It was very kind of bare bones and functional, but beautiful. Again, just looking at that picture, you have the same kind of aluminum with the divots in the steering wheel. You have the same thing on the shift knob. It was just so functional. It was very Bauhaus. Bauhaus, of course, is form that is function, stripped down, purely functional. And in that pure function, there is elegance and beauty. This was a beautiful car to look at. It was elegant, it was upscale, and it was so successful, Stefan. Nobody considered the fact that it was just a Volkswagen Golf.
Yeah, what a great idea. But I remember the other thing I remember about this car, that at the second generation they had, of course, Audi had the RS versions, and you remember we went to the R10, R8 driving school at Sonoma, and the driving instructor was in an Audi TT RS ahead of us, and we couldn't catch the guy. I mean,
No,
it just shows. I mean, he was a talented race car driver, but I really thought that being in an Audi R8, that if I wanted to stick to his bumper, even though I was not, because I'm such a powerful supercar versus the little Audi TTRS, but yeah, the car once as it evolved, second generation, they put the lip on the back, they got some aerodynamics. It was a fantastic car. And when I see these, I still get a smile on my face.
yeah.
I really do. I see it. I'm like, yeah, that car that's just coolness. I just love it. Yeah, even to this day.
Yeah, I would love to own one. I love to drive it. One nice little thing is because of the design, that actually has a lot of headroom for the driver. I'm 6'2", I had plenty of headroom, and that's an accident of design process because they just happen to have a high roof and you're sitting pretty low. There's plenty of space. Boy, I love that car. Absolutely love it. Every time I see a Gen 1. The Gen 2, you know what it reminds me of is the Scirocco. Volkswagen Scirocco came out, and the Volkswagen Scirocco was just so unique. It was so novel. And then it was designed by Guigaro, an Ital design. And then the second gen, the Germans took over the design, and they made it so mainstream and watered down. It lost all of its individual appeal. It lost all of its uniqueness. Same thing with the TT. The second generation was just okay.
Ah,
It didn't have nearly the same distinctiveness. I'm sure they sold more of them because it wasn't quite so unique. But the first gen was magic.
I've always got had a soft spot for two-door coupes, and the picture here I'm showing of the TTRS, and what a fantastic color too. But I could totally own this car. I
Yeah.
mean, this is beautiful.
Oh, it's so
Um,
great.
yeah,
I miss
it's
it.
great. Yep.
Well, we're going to wrap up, but before we do, the Audi TT is 25 years old, which still blows my mind, Stefan. We talked about Dark Side of the Moon. Was 50 years old back in 2023. Wish You Were Here is 50 years old this year. But my favorite song from the 80s that's played all the time is Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Tears for Fears. That song is 40 years old.
We're getting old, dude. I mean, that is a fabulous song. But no, we're getting old, and I actually on my Spotify today did big 80s, and there was some great music in the 80s. I mean, The Cure, Tears for Fears, Lloyd Cole, The Commotions, just, I mean, you could just name off. There was so much individual sound. Everybody had their own unique take on this whole new wave, big 80s thing. And the music was just, I mean, it was just colorful. Today I kind of feel like when I'm listening to the radio, it just all kind of sounds AI the same, just kind of like this generated folk pop stuff. But back in the big 80s, that was just a fantastic album and great band and good song, good video too. That was
Great
back in the
video.
great video. The only band I think that had, I think the best videos of the day, Duran Duran, man. They had the best videos on MTV.
All right, Stefan, let's see if you can
All
get
right,
this
dude.
right. Let's see if you can get
Okay.
this right.
All right.
In everybody wants to rule the world video, which was a classic. The singer was driving through the American West in a car. What car was it?
Oh, dude. Oh, man. Was it a convertible?
Yes,
Okay. It had to be a Cadillac Eldorado.
Austin Healey.
An Austin Healey. Ah, shit. Okay. Yeah, I know. Uh,
It's a beautiful car, and he's got like his guitar in the back, and it's an Austin Healey, and he drives through the American West. And welcome to your life. There's no turning back. And it was such a great song. It's still a great song. So I heard somebody say something. How is it that the songs back then are so memorable and the songs now they all kind of merge together and there nothing really stands out? You know what he said? He said because back then we had hits. Now we don't have hits.
Here we go. There we go. There you go. Let me switch to screen share here. I actually pull it up. There's a great video of him. There you go. Sitting in the car, getting ready for filming.
Oh, that's it. That's the car. I
Yep.
forgot the color, but
It's
of course
green.
it's
Yeah.
green.
Green, of course.
Yeah, so he's got the sunglasses, but it's an Austin Healey, I think 3000,
Yep.
and it's the perfect car for the video. It's a perfect car for him, and it's a perfect car for the song. It's a little jarring to see that car in the American West, but it works.
It was very cool.
All right, we are done. Let's wrap us up, Dr. Moran.
All right. Thanks for listening. And we're hoping to have Adams back with us here shortly. He's taking care of some family issues, but we miss him. And thanks for listening once again. Remember to hit subscribe so you'll be automatically notified when we get a new video up. And don't know when, but we'll see you next time.
Miss you, Adams. Bye-bye.